Someone say the thing. Someone say the
Hey,
thing.
hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, October 7th, 2021. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to the podcast this week. It is a momentous occasion. For the first time in who knows how long, weeks and weeks and weeks, we have a trifecta. The full crew is here. I'm Norm, and I'm joined by Jeremy Williams.
Hello, Norm.
Hi, Jeremy. And Kishore.
I'm really disappointed this has disproved our Jeremy and Kishore are the same person.
One of you is a deep fake version of the other.
Yeah, just cosplaying as each other weekly.
Yeah, without the podcast, you guys have not directly interacted, is my assumption, right? Like this is the only time you get to see each other and talk to each other. I've been having to play telephone and relay the messages, sharing.
What are you talking about? Jeremy and I get like a coffee every afternoon. We just don't invite you.
You have a separate podcast you do, right? That I'm not a part of.
Yeah, that you probably wouldn't listen to even if you knew about.
Hey! At least Kishore listens to the podcast when he's not on it.
Yeah,
just to catch up. I believe that's true, right? Is that right?
I mean,
right,
like
Kishore?
I'm a maniac. I listen at like 2.5 speed. So
that's
like,
true.
If you call
that's
listening.
Right. Well, it's good to see you both. How you both been doing this past week?
Doing great. Doing great. No complaints.
No complaints. We all had a good, I guess it was 2 days ago now. We were all able to get some fresh air, be off our computer, or maybe just stay on Twitter for a while when part of the internet went down. What was it? Half of social media went down.
You know what's funny? I missed it. I use a Chrome extension that blocks social media during the day so I could be like more productive at work. And so like the Nobel Prizes were for biology were announced that morning, and I tweeted something about that, and then like put down my phone, and then like I picked it up at the end of the day, and I was like, "Holy crap, what happened?" I completely missed it.
I mean, I'm not someone who's on Facebook regularly. I think Instagram is the closest I am to Facebook, and we'll be certainly talking about the relevant platform news that was happening this week. But like, how did you guys find out? Like, I found out via Twitter, and just like the jokes on Twitter started happening. You know, at Twitter had a nice little tweet about it, and I think the surprising thing for me was how long that outage was.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. Like I found out around 9 o'clock that it had been down for 15 minutes, and I thought I'd probably missed it. Like, oh, let's check it out. Go to Facebook. No, it's still down. You know, but then lo and behold, how many hours was it down? Like 6 hours? It was a long time.
And I don't know about any of the reports. I mean, people are they're like Wired has great articles about what happened and all the DNS stuff, but apparently it was like router, like actual like back-end router problems. And one tweet said an insider said they actually had to take an angle grinder to the server room to get to the routers to access them because they're usually so protected.
Facebook wrote a blog post about it. You know, they sort of explained from their perspective, at least as much as they were willing to share, what happened. And it was apparently it was due to a command that someone typed in that was supposed to like query how much, you know, bandwidth was available or how much they could afford to take down. And a command was mistyped. And the safeguards that were supposed to protect the system from a command being mistyped failed. And kablooey, everything went down. And then that required, like, since all of their infrastructure, all of like the Facebook backbone was offline, they had to go on site to those servers to boot them back up. And apparently there's security for the Facebook server farm. And so it was difficult to get in to access the servers and to, you know,
meaning like the key card stuff was offline too or something. Like, what do you mean by that?
I don't know. I want to see the docudrama of this happening because I'd very much be interested in seeing that that 6 hour period go down in you know, the engineering department of Facebook.
I mean, I gave a lot of crap to Free Guy last week, and not to give too many plot spoilers, but there is a moment in the movie where someone takes an axe to a server room,
Yeah.
and this just made me think of that, like an angle grinder to at least the padlock door, the gated door of the server room. Like this is exactly the kind of low stakes, high drama stuff that us on social media or us on Twitter can wonder about. But it would make the most boring plot of a hacker film.
Norm, I owe you a debt of gratitude for lowering my expectations for Free Guy, by the way, because I freaking loved it. My whole family loved it. We sat down and watched it last Friday night and had a blast. I think that movie is up there in like the best computer game movies ever.
What?
Yes. I mean, you can't take it too seriously. You can't go in looking for like authenticity and documentary style, indie game, the movie retelling of real computer game development. You have to service the story, and so I allow for lots of things to happen. But I completely enjoyed all the little in jokes, the crossover, the stuff that isn't necessarily 20th Century Fox. I thought it was great. I enjoyed every minute of it. My family and I had many laugh out loud moments.
Yeah. The things you're alluding to, there were stories about the making of the film and how, this was a film that was made in like 2019, right? Like it was supposed to be out years ago, and they were in production when the Disney acquisition of Fox happened, and so they quickly, sought permission for the appropriate crossovers, and we forgot that was the whole thing, that those were separate companies, and that made the cameos and it made the little twists and turns really delightful. I enjoyed that part, and yeah, into the nods, but I still stand by my criticism. I'm not sure if you've seen the movie yet, but I think the glossy, the over caricatured portrayal of game development or game developers,
yes,
like their Bobby Kotick equivalent was a little bit distasteful.
No, very, very flawed, very flawed. But in service of the plot, and it worked.
Yeah.
And the stuff in the game far more interesting.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Jeremy, you said Facebook wrote a blog post, or at least as much as they were willing to share.
Yeah.
Could be applied also to the statement they made about the leaks this week. So we want to talk about that. There was, of course, we've been following the news, congressional testimony of a whistleblower who dropped some documents that Wall Street Journal published about some supposedly internal research. And the thing that's most relevant to us, I think, as parents is how this affects kids using social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, or any other platform, or Twitter. How do you guys think about the platforms that you allow your kids on? Because it's something that I'm going to start to think about, sooner rather than later.
Oh my gosh. I mean, well, first of all, thankfully, my kids aren't really interested in Facebook. I don't know if it's a generational thing or what, if they're just not old enough yet. I treat Facebook like a phone book. Like I use it to find old friends. And I don't post on there very much at all. But my kids have no interest in it. Like they're on TikTok. That's their thing. And that, not to say like that doesn't have any problems.
It's the same thing, right?
It's the same thing. Like, and it's terrifying. So like I didn't let my kids on TikTok till they were a certain age that I felt comfortable with. And of course I talked to them about what they're watching, and I don't know. I mean, it's part of me wants them to learn to deal with the matrix. Like they can't grow up and not understand and not have access to that stuff, because they'll eventually have access to it and you have no control over it. You want them to sort of like understand the fabric of social media and learn to cope with it. And so learn what's real and what's not. Don't take your cues from it. But, if you want to be able to talk to your friends about what's going on, on TikTok or elsewhere, you got to be able to have access to it. And so I wanted them to have access to it in service of their friendships, of their real world friendships. But it's a real big question, especially difficult for us because we did not grow up with this.
Yeah. Do you think the digital native thing has an impact on this? Because my kid doesn't have a phone yet. He primarily uses YouTube. And when I look at his YouTube history, he's mostly looking up for ways to advanced characters in video games he's playing. So like that's 99% of his searches, which I can totally relate to. Um, so but I imagine he's going to have a totally different relationship to social media than I do, uh, even though I've largely grown up on the internet.
I just want to say like it's that's almost. I mean, what happened with the leaks in regards to
Mhm.
children is there apparently Facebook's own research showed that they could retain longer, use by their users, particularly in children, if they direct them on Instagram from searches about eating to anorexic disorders and topics. So they were making connections from a search query that weren't necessarily logical, but serviced, longer engagement.
Mhm.
And that's really, really disturbing for me. And that's the kind of thing that, like, that's a prime example of why, as parents, you do need to be engaged with your kids and check in with what they are doing, and reviewing search histories, or at least having dinner table conversations so that you keep a dialogue open.
But it's a case where even the search history isn't enough, right? Because sure, you say you can check your kid's search history, you can see what they're typing in, but the results they're seeing isn't something that's transparent to you, and it's the results, the algorithmically driven results, that
Mhm.
seem to be the levers that are being pulled to maximize, use time and ad dollars, and without a necessarily consideration for the parents, what the parents would want.
I mean, I primarily use Twitter, so a lot of this like conversation seems a little foreign to me because I don't use those services as much. Like I use TikTok, but you should see what the algorithm serves me. It's mostly cleaning videos and stuff about grills. I think it's pegged me as a middle-aged dad. But but I remember years ago when Twitter made the tweak to its algorithm, um, I changed it to just serving up tweets in order by timeline again. Because I was like, I don't like the lack of transparency in how it's like feeding me top results. And so my social media use is like timeline based now. Um, and because I don't use any other service besides Twitter, essentially. Uh, and it's totally digestible because it's very transparent about what's happening in that way. It's still not perfect. I don't make any qualms about it, but it takes away this feeling of like there's a black box happening behind the scenes.
I still think it's just the illusion of transparency. Even if you're going to sort, posts by a timeline, whether it's on a blog, on a social media feed, or whatever, you are still you just do not have full visibility into what they're showing you. They can omit things. They'll the way they place their promoted tweets or whatever. And I think I go back to this question of that you asked about the digital native, right? Like we didn't grow up with this. We're of this unique generation that we straddled the line, and we saw the slow and then fast exponential growth of these services, from not having an internet connection at all to always being connected to websites, to apps, to all these next platforms. Even though there's a whole generation now that grew up with this stuff in their lives, I don't know if being a native to that world necessarily makes them more capable at parsing exactly how that stuff works, because they just take it for granted, right? Because we saw the first couple iterations of this, and maybe
Mhm.
I'm wrong, but because maybe we saw the failures of all the different types of social media, like before they optimized for this type of algorithm based feed. We saw searches, we saw web crawler based searches, we saw user submitted search engines, right? So we've seen the entire progression of how algorithms have come to be. I don't know if this current generation is cognizant of that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think the root issue is that people are impressionable, and the tricky part is, like, we think of children as being impressionable, and kids tend to accept the fact that they are. But as adults grow up, they tend to think of themselves as less impressionable, and the truth is we all are, and we can
Mhm.
all be coerced, and we can all be, confused. And it's like the old adage: it's much easier to fool somebody than to convince them that they've been fooled. And I think that social media, has figured that out, and they have found a way to get people to engage for longer periods of time, and in exchange they have served them content that they um don't necessarily or wouldn't necessarily have gravitated to otherwise. And they that's the coercion factor, and kids can be coerced, but so can we. And it's important to keep that in mind when you're on any social media platform.
Did you see the Tim Cook tweet or quote about this? He was interviewed
No.
about social media. He did an interview with Bustle, and he talked about how he wishes or he wants Apple's technology to be more to be used for creative purposes and less about the endless mindless scrolling behavior that social media promotes. But I think they're fully complicit. Like, they make their devices so that the endless scroll is as easy an experience and as pleasurable experience as possible on their hardware.
That's a stretch.
They also
come on.
No, but like, they make an ecosystem that's designed to keep you in it too. So
Oh yeah.
Like, they make a seamless system for that. Like, you have a phone that dominates your life, a watch that can, a TV piece that has like an entertainment division. Like, they're expanding their hardware everywhere too. I'm not sure I want to hear from like leaders of tech companies on this issue right now. I actually think the interesting conversation that's emerged is the researcher stuff. And this is not going to surprise anyone. I kind of want to hear from the academics that have done research on this, about what the pathway forward is, because from what I understand is everyone is there isn't like a one way people react to social media, and we have to start having a nuanced conversation about its effects. Like Jeremy was saying, like, the difference between kids and adults probably has some themes of similarity, but also there are some important differences that we have to note. And when we're thinking about regulation, have to take that into heart.
It's funny, connected to this Tim Cook article is also a reference to a quote from the creator of endless scrolling. It's not something we even think about, but the idea of endless scrolling on a social media platform, the fact that you don't have to click next on a page or click refresh, the fact that you could just scroll was in fact invented by a person, Asa Raskin, and he in 2019 said he regretted that invention. I'm sure if he didn't invent it, someone else would have eventually, right? But like, that's an interesting thing to think about. Like, going back to how we've seen, all the iterations of social media, and there are many more to come, as I'm sure. But the fact that that was something that at some point like didn't exist,
Yep.
and we don't even think about that today, right? And the phones are built for infinite scroll, infinite content, keep you on the phone at all times. Hey everyone, Norm here. Before we continue, I want to let you know that this week's episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from itpro.tv. Start or grow your IT career with online IT training from itpro.tv. Did the recent ransomware attack on the gas pipeline catch your attention? It's another example of how cybersecurity professionals are in demand. There are more than 500,000 open cybersecurity roles, and you can become a CyberSec Pro with online training. It's never too late to start a career in IT or move up the ladder, and itpro.tv has you covered. From CompTIA and Cisco to EC Council and Microsoft, itpro.tv has nearly 6,000 hours of on-demand training and engaging hosts who present information in a talk show format. They're live every day, and shows go studio to web in 24 hours. Courses are conveniently listed by category, certification, and job role, and stream itpro.tv courses live and on demand worldwide via Roku, Apple TV, PC, or their iOS and Android apps. Learn IT, pass your certs, and get a great job with itpro.tv. Visit itpro.tv/test to save 30% off all plans. That's itpro.tv/test. Once again, itpro.tv/test. Now back to the show. Speaking of technology that we've seen come and grow and change and iterate, kids remember Windows 8? Remember Windows? No, there was no Windows 9, but remember Windows 8 and 7 and 10? Well, we got Windows 11. Windows 11 is out this week. It came out a day early, actually. All the new Microsoft hardware dropped on the 5th, but as of 2 days ago, you can download and run the full version of Windows 11, assuming you have a TPM enabled processor, Intel 8th Gen or newer, and meet all the new system requirements, including having now a valid license key. Either of you updated to Windows 11?
I have not been offered a free update by Windows 10. So I've gone and Windows Update and checked, and they said you got to hold out longer. Like apparently the only people getting them right now are people who got an OEM something or other. No,
Not true.
Not
you
true.
can you can Google Windows, download Windows 11, and Microsoft has a page where you can manually have an update check tool as well as a download tool. I've created a USB key, a bootable media also already for Windows 11, and I have it on this very machine. And then yesterday, after using it for 1 day on my laptop, my production machine, why not? And I upgraded to Windows 11 on both my computers.
I don't know if I would do it. I mean, honestly, like after I checked in, made sure I was compatible, and I realized that I couldn't get it yet. And by the way, I don't know, like The Verge has an article that says that everybody who can get a free update should be able to get one by mid 2022. So I don't know where the information difference is. In any case, I watched some reviews of it, and it seems a little unfinished. Like am I wrong? Like the dark mode is not consistent throughout the interface. There's still some old like 90s looking windows if you go deep enough into your system settings. And I mean, I'm not a big fan of the start button and all the things being centered. I know you can change that to the left, but I don't know why did you install it on both systems? What do you like about it?
I was curious, first of all,
Mhm.
and my big fears, of course, were stability. Like we've seen really bad Windows launches in the past, where driver incompatibility. But at this point, it's just really it's a reskinning. Like this is still based on a quarter century old Windows NT kernel, and if you dig hard enough, you can find not only the same like files, but the same interfaces. Like you can still see that old control panel. Like every version of Windows puts a flashy new taskbar, puts a flashy new way to display File Explorer or something, and maybe has new ways for organizing your desktop. And certainly this has all of those as well, and things that are optimized for laptop use, like your bottom right status bar now is very familiar, airplane mode and all that stuff, built-in notifications, whatever. It just feels like a nice skin. Like felt like if a third party sold a Windows 10 reskin, this would be something like that.
But do you like the animations? Like, do you feel like that's worthwhile? Like, it does have kind of a sleeker look. It's a little more rounded. No?
I've never been a fan of animations. Like one of the things I've always did with old versions of Windows was turn off animations because I felt like it took unnecessary resources, and I like the speediness of just having windows. Like when I click the window that's behind another window, I just want it to be there. I don't want any extra frames, unnecessary frames. So no, I'm not a big fan of that. I hate the new Alt Tab. And a lot of the stuff is just like reconfiguring your brain. You're so used to looking at a file icon in a certain way that when you open File Explorer and things look a little different, it's going to take a week or so to reconfigure your brain. The big change is taskbar is completely different now. They've built in the Microsoft Teams chat. They have widgets off to the left side that can come in. The default is centered. That whatever. I already moved mine back to the left. There's no more vertical taskbar. So a lot of people with widescreen, ultra widescreen monitors, or even laptops that were 16:9 aspect ratio. Thankfully, a lot of the Microsoft stuff has moved to 4:3 or 3:2, 4:3. But the wider laptops is always nice to have the taskbar vertically on the side to not eat up the real estate below. And some of the window management, like the maximize button, right? Your minimize, maximize,
Yes.
close window. Hovering over the maximize button now allows you to automatically lock and pin a window to a certain like split screen configuration. So like 1/3 the screen, bottom half of the screen, as opposed to fully maximized. So it's not really a maximize button as it is a pin to a certain part of the screen. Yeah, it just feels like a nice reskinning. There are some things I really think are inconsistent, like the right click context menu. It looks super new now, right? You have all these new different icons for when you right click in any window. But if you want to access an extra feature like copy Dropbox link, which I do a lot, right? Or open terminal, and there's a button now that says more actions or show more options. You click that show more options and it's a completely different right click menu. Like literally the right click menu morphs into an older looking, just rounded corner right click menu. So yeah, it just feels like a reskinning that is not fully complete yet.
Yeah, that just seems weird to me. I mean, I would think that they would have the resources to assign as many people as necessary to their flagship product to finish it before it's released. Like, doesn't that make sense?
What are you talking about? What are you talking about, Jeremy Williams? You forget your history. When have you ever seen a Windows product that was you're like, wow, this version 1 is so complete. This is great.
Yeah.
It's usually like there's usually a, I don't know, 3 months in a big update that loads in with the features that give you the impression of what the rounded product is going to be. I have never, well, I'll take that back. I think 95, I waited in line to get 95 and loaded that fresh. But outside of that, I have never loaded the Windows product on like the first day it was out. Are you kidding me? Like you wait for that first update. So none of this comes off as a shock to me that it's not fully developed. I am a little concerned about the PC requirements that are in place, about how many of the Windows 10 PCs will actually be able to update. It's not so much like a processor thing. I think I saw reports that like 80+% of the Windows PCs out there run Windows 10 right now. And that's a massive advantage for them to have a single operating system out in the marketplace. But from what I read about the requirements, there is going to be a much larger percentage of PCs not able to upgrade, in part due to some of the security requirements related to the processor. And that's going to pose real problems for them to, again, have a bifurcated like market where they're trying to support 10 and 11 on whole hosts of machines.
Do you
remember?
Know,
oh, go ahead.
Do you know anything about the security feature that is required in the Intel chips and on the motherboard? Is that to service Windows piracy, or is that going to benefit us on a larger scale, against viruses and worms and stuff?
It's the latter.
Good.
It's Trusted Platform Module 2.0. In fact, mine was not enabled, and there are a whole slew of how-to articles about how to find it. It's not even named like TPM in some cases in your.
And you have to do it in your BIOS, right?
You have to do it in your UEFI BIOS.
Yeah, I did too.
And I think some of this compensates for some of the big viruses that were like very low level viruses that we saw that you had to update BIOS and CPU firmware to overcome. And I think Microsoft has said they're not going to stop people without TPM 2.0 from installing it. There will be a way for you to install Windows 11. You just won't get like the full support. Going back to things you said, Kishore, like Windows 95 was a big, massive launch because it enabled a lot of new things. There were killer apps, right? Games specifically, right? You could play like DirectX, a whole category of games. You remember also Windows 7, even though it had its issues, it launched with DX10. And there are certain DX10 exclusive features in the gaming world that you could not get, like in Crysis, without having Windows 7 installed, right? And we go back, like Windows 8 was that big misstep, that Steven Sinofsky and his team launched because there was a very reactionary redesign to iOS emerging, the kind of touchscreen, big paneled UI. And so ever since Windows 8, we've been kind of not regressing, kind of making our way back toward an optimized version of what Windows 7 was, with Windows 8 and 10. And then with this 80% adoption rate for Windows 10, Windows 10 has been out for a long time. And
6 years.
the 80% isn't necessarily that all of these users are on the same version of Windows 10, right? What you would consider, like OS 10, right? All these people on the Mac side, Windows 10 is just like a whole swath of every computer in these past 6 years. If you wanted driver support or whatever. So yeah, and I don't know what the new feature is in Windows 11 that's going to feel like a killer app. For VR users, if you have a Windows Mixed Reality headset, there's a exclusive experience in Windows 11. Like they have this infinite expanse UI. They have like much better Steam VR integration. But that stuff's going to make its way over to Windows 10 later. So
yeah, there's a nice
no rush.
Apparently, if you're an Xbox user, there's a really nice Xbox app inside Windows 11 that allows you to access your library and even stream games if you're if you have the right tier of subscription. So I guess that's good. I'm not an Xbox owner, so I don't know.
You're not a Game Pass user, and they're banking on that
Yeah.
that the Game Pass users wanting to also do things on Windows PCs, whether it's stream or play those games and get more value out of their subscription. It reminds me with Windows 10, them trying to mash together, the Universal Windows app through the Windows Store, right? One app that would run on a Windows Phone and a Windows 10 and have a very specific like look and UI and lock you into their app store, and that never took off. And I think Windows 11 has like it's to come, but Android integration, so you can run Android apps natively on your phone or on your Windows computer, but that's a not at launch feature. Yeah. So long story short,
I'm probably gonna install this before the end of the year, though. Who are you kidding? Like Jeremy, you're not running Windows 10 come March of next year.
Okay.
I'll bet you something that's not of much value that you won't be running.
well, it's of the old mindset too of like with Windows 8, 7, 95, XP, whatever, you're paying for Windows, right? People are waiting in line at CompUSA to buy copies because of a killer app. Now it's like the mindset is, oh, if this update doesn't cripple my system and isn't buggy, sure, why not? It's more like you're upgrading not to get new things, but you're upgrading because you're not afraid that it's going to be a backward experience.
Sounds like how I feel when I upgrade Mac OS. So like it's not terribly different.
Yeah. So we'll see whether you guys have Windows 11 installed by next year. They're also doing updates only once a year now. With Windows 10, it was every twice a year. They had a spring update and a big fall update for big patches. And and again, I believe that a lot of people just never did the updates and just are on like 2-year-old versions of Windows 10 at this point. We've got a couple more stories to wrap things up. This is something interesting and fun that will lead into a rant. Did you guys see that Seinfeld is on Netflix now?
Yes.
Big deal, right? In the streaming wars, right? It's like, who's going to lay claim to these classic series? I mean, it's always surprising when I see like, how much money a company like Amazon, Netflix, or HBO will invest in new content. And yet, if you look at the data, that a large swath of the audience is just watching old content. Previously Office or Friends. Like HBO made such a big deal of having Friends because people just like the comfort of watching classic TV shows at this point, and the same with Seinfeld. And so they paid a crazy amount of money to get the rights to Seinfeld. It's on Netflix, and to promote that, did you see this advertising campaign, this big 2-minute ad that they produced?
Nope.
Oh my God. Okay, I'll put a link in the show notes. But they got Jerry Seinfeld, they got Bryan Cranston, and they got Patrick Warburton, Putty from Seinfeld, right? And it's a whole skit and whatever, but it's also a cross promotion with the Lego Seinfeld set. Did you see that? Did you know? Okay, so Lego Ideas, right? Earlier this year, there was a Lego. It was the studio's apartment. So it was Jerry's apartment, but it was like the studio backdrop. What the studio set looked like. The three walls and
Yeah.
and that as a Lego set. Interesting tidbit. That set was designed by friend of Tested, Brent Waller, who was the guy who did the Ecto-1 Lego Ideas, as well as he visited our studio a couple of years ago. I think he's in Australia. He visited our studio and we built the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So he's had a couple of successful Lego Ideas campaigns. But his most recent one was the Seinfeld set. And to promote Seinfeld and Netflix, they built a life-size version of that Lego set. They built Jerry's apartment in life-size Lego as a representation of the TV set.
And they got Seinfeld to be in this thing?
And Jerry Seinfeld put on a giant Lego costume with fake Lego hair and did a whole skit inside of it.
I'm watching it now. And so they got Bryan Cranston, aka Tim Whatley, to narrate this. They must have spent millions of dollars for this joke. I mean, I understand they're promoting Seinfeld on Netflix, but there's no way Lego is going to recoup those costs.
No, this is like 100% Netflix money and I guess Lego permission. But Jeremy, watching this, you'd appreciate this. It took me so long for my brain to accept the fact that this was a life-size physical set that they built. My brain wanted to believe that they composited Jerry Seinfeld's face in a miniature macro shot Lego.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like he's holding other things that are human scale that I realized, no, they actually physically built the Seinfeld TV set out of Lego at human scale.
Are you sure about that? Like maybe they just built the couch and the rest is composited in there from a CG.
It could be. I haven't seen any behind the scenes pictures, but I've watched it a couple of times and it looks like he's interacting fully, like walking around, carrying things. The lighting looks pretty good. I was emailing with Brent Waller, who designed the Lego set. He had no idea they were doing this commercial.
No kidding. Wow.
Imagine from his perspective.
Oh, he must love it.
As a fan, designed as a MOC, the Seinfeld studio set, submitted to Lego, got it turned into a thing that people can buy, and then saw that design get blown up into human scale with Jerry Seinfeld walking around it. That's kind of crazy. So good for him. But my rant, Seinfeld on Netflix, bullshit. Absolute bullshit. It is the 16:9 crop version of the show.
Yeah.
Unwatchable. Literally unwatchable.
Yeah,
that's all I gotta say about that.
It's the same remaster that they already had on hand, right? They didn't do a new one for this.
They didn't do a new one, but the 4:3 HD version exists.
It does.
We had this. It does, absolutely. The show was shot on film. There's a PAL version that has like extra. It's this whole thing with aspect ratio junkies. Like there's a version that has more space that you never got to see in the US 4:3 broadcast because it was PAL and NTSC, and actually that's timing differences as well. And then there's the NTSC 4:3, which exists in HD. But whatever the rights holders, I want to say it's Buena Vista, it's Sony, maybe Columbia. But whatever they delivered to Netflix was like the cable TV cut, which is a 16:9 cropping, which literally cuts off jokes in the show, visual gags.
Yeah,
famously the potholes. Exactly. I thought we were done with this. Like Simpsons. Remember there was a whole thing with Disney Plus and Simpsons.
Yeah, that was terrible.
And it being 16:9, and it took a while for them to get to 4:3.
I'll bet
Netflix
solves this problem before I have Windows 11 installed.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Good
bet
callback.
they will either give you both options as just different shows, or they'll have a button you can press to choose between one or the other, as if you were choosing between languages.
Choose your own adventure.
Yes.
style.
Exactly.
Netflix would never go into that.
That's what they
area.
would do. Exactly.
Yeah. It's the worst possible worlds, worst possible timeline. I refuse to watch it without it being at 4x3.
There you go.
But Netflix, you still got my subscription money. You still got Squid Game. I guess they win at the end of the day.
I couldn't make it through Squid Game. It's like too dystopian for the current moment. I can't watch anything that is that horrifying right now.
It's the zeitgeist.
Yeah, that's the thing. My son came home from high school and he said, "Dad, there's this show on Netflix. My whole school's talking about it. It's called Squid Game. Like everybody's watching it on their laptops." So I checked it out, and that's why I watched it, because I wanted to, be inside the high school zeitgeist, find out what the kids are talking about. And I watched the first episode. I haven't gone back. Maybe I'm probably with you. I probably won't make it all the way through. It's definitely, like, from a parent's perspective, there's some dark stuff in there. But it's also, I also get it. Like, I understand why it's popular, and I think it's headed towards number one on like Netflix ever. Right?
Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Isn't that crazy? Not just, foreign language. For something, it's the power of social media. It's going back to what the kids are talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking of Netflix, I'm sure this didn't do as well as they had hoped, but they wrapped up their Inspiration 4 documentary. I watched that final episode, which covered the launch, and it was really good. I really enjoyed how they how they covered it, and the footage they showed. It's just amazing footage of the launch. They had some crazy helicopter shots, but the footage of them, actually, that crew in space, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. What I would definitely watch, though, which will probably not get made. This is a chance for Amazon Prime to move right into that space, is film the William Shatner space experience. That's coming up. That's coming up in less than a week.
Wait, so he's going to space in a week?
In a week's time. It was like announced.
So before the show, Norm told me how old William Shatner is, and I could not believe it. And then we're sending him to space at his age.
Yeah,
he is 90.
Yeah,
and we're sending him to space. I'm thinking about calling like Adult Protective Services on Amazon. This is crazy.
Hell of a way to go.
First of all, it's not space. It's like, it's near Earth orbit kind of stuff.
Hell of a way to go, right? I mean,
that's very cynical. Jeremy, he's going to come back stronger than ever. The cosmic rays will infuse him with extraordinary abilities.
He's going to become Reed Richards? That's your theory here?
At least the Thing.
I was shocked he was 90. I watched an interview with him recently. He was sharp as nails. I mean, the guy was like responding and quipping and, doing callbacks to the interview. It was impressive. Like, no way is this guy 90, because I looked it up out of curiosity after the interview. So he's in good shape. At least no. Mentally.
He's mentally in good shape, but he's 90. Like, this is about like putting all G load on your body and your heart being able to, that's my concern.
He rides horses. He'll be fine. He did Shark Week. He's been in the extreme situations. I mean, I'm sure they're taking every precaution. I'm sure doctors are all over it. It is kind of amazing that they just announced this, and then less than a week later, it's going to happen as a part of this launch on October 12th. Blue Origin launch paid for by Jeff Bezos. Buzz Aldrin is 91. If they invited Buzz and Shatner, it's real life space cowboys.
What?
Yeah.
That's breaking my brain that Buzz Aldrin and Bill Shatner are essentially the same age.
Right. Well, he's going up just as a space tourist. He's not going to make movies, but we do see this between this Inspiration 4 that all the billionaires going up. SNL had a big skit about it, a Star Trek themed skit about it, and the renewed interest in private space flight. The next big thing is, of course, the movie filmed in space, and Russia is on top of that. They've already sent their actor and director up to the ISS. They're there right now filming the first ever fiction, dramatic film filmed on the ISS. Did you guys hear about this?
I heard that there was a director going to the ISS. That was the extent of it.
The ISS is not a big space. It's not. I mean, for all the different camera angles, right? And we've seen, the first music video recorded there, Chris Hadfield, and we've seen all sorts of tours around the ISS. There's only it's like a bottle episode, whatever they're making, right? The plot of it is going to be a doctor is sent to the space station to like assist in some medical emergency, and some trauma happens, but it's going to be a feature length film. And if Tom Cruise is going up at some point with Doug Liman and to the ISS and making a film, they're using the same locations. It's like the same, the same 3 Hollywood locations that all the studios are going to use. But they got one location on the ISS. I guess the Russian side, which we never really get to see in any of the tours, they have access to. So they've got some angles that we don't get to see here on the US side. But are you guys interested in watching this movie? Like, what's going to make it interesting?
It feels like a stunt because everything that you talked about can easily be reproduced on the Vomit Comet and with shots of space that are frankly probably better looking than what the actual shots out of the ISS cupola would be.
That's the other thing, going back to the Inspiration 4 documentary, the reaction, we've seen the reaction shots on YouTube of the crew opening up their cupola, right? That the SpaceX Dragon capsule had, the thing that was at the nose cone that replaced the hatch. And that window looks so much more amazing, especially since they're at a higher altitude than the ISS, altitude than the ISS. Like, they got to see, as best they could relay it, the curvature of the Earth, like without kind of the classic, the framing, the frame of the cupola. And you're gonna need a pretty wide angle lens to capture anything looking remotely like that on the ISS. Otherwise, it's just one corridor, a couple corridors with lots of netting and wires around. How are they going to light it? I'm so curious.
I'm good. This doesn't sound very good to me. I'm just calling it out. Doesn't sound very good to me, though. This is a terrible segue. Have you been watching What If? Talking about something that is pretty good.
I know the final episode aired last night. Is that right? Or is airing today as we're recording this?
Yes. Yeah, we haven't watched it. None of us have watched it, right?
No, not yet.
All right. First of all, it got dark real quick in What If. I was shocked at how dark the episodes have been.
Yeah.
Especially that dark Doctor Strange one. That was heart-wrenching. But that 7th episode was pretty good. The Ultron episode. Yeah. It's like and I'm not going to spoil much. It's an Ultron based episode. It's a 2-parter, we think. But I was impressed by where they went. I wasn't expecting like that level of malevolence in the storytelling. I thought, it made it actually worthwhile for this show, which had been meandering along at points.
And having not seen the finale either, last week's episode did make you think, okay, wait a minute, maybe now all of these episodes I've been watching that have something going on that I wasn't aware of, that I kind of maybe took for granted or just you're dismissed. In much the same way that like Wanda did, where once you got to, what was it, episode 4, you realized that there were things happening all along that you needed to be paying attention to. So I like that aspect of it. I like that they're still surprising me with their TV shows.
Well, it's a classic anthology story trick, right? You create a show that's on paper an anthology show, and then the big twist at the end of season 3 is that they're all in the same universe,
right?
Or something,
exactly.
Right? It's all connected somehow. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a season 2 of this. It's been a huge success. I will say, as great as What If has been, I've enjoyed Star Wars Visions, I think, more as a little anthology series. The episode, The Ninth Jedi. I know people have been raving about it since the show aired, but I got to double down. That is an incredible piece of Star Wars storytelling.
Is this the anime series?
Yes. If you haven't seen it, Jeremy, I
Haven't seen it.
implore you.
Yeah.
And they're short too. They're like, between 12 and 18 minutes long.
Okay.
Traditionally animated with some CG, but I was thinking about like what makes Star Wars Visions like different. What did it feel different? And I felt like they're so willing to go to different parts of the Star Wars galaxy. And yeah, there are familiar things here and there, lightsabers, but they're so willing to tell a story on a remote planet that's barely touched by the things that we had seen in the original trilogy, and the just with just references. It felt way more like a peek into a different corner of the Star Wars universe than what the Mandalorian show has been, which has been really tied, especially at the end of this last season. Ended up being tied to the Star Wars we know, and I think the directors of the Star Wars Vision shorts have really been given the freedom to tonally tell a story that feels like anime, feels like a different pace, feels like it could be, you can strip it of the trappings of Star Wars and it would be great anime storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
From the music to the animation to just it's gorgeous. Yeah. So yeah, Star Wars Visions, go check it out. One last thing as we wrap up for VR, we got Oculus Connect / Facebook Connect coming up at the end of the month. Canon announced, if you're interested in VR 180, they announced a new $2,000 lens that goes on their $5,000 R5 camera to film VR 180. It's like a monstrosity of a lens. It's a double fisheye as one lens that gets mounted on to the R mount. It's crazy. And also the headset company Lynx announced their R1 Kickstarter, which is already funded, but the pricing was pretty aggressive, $500 for this headset. That's supposed to be both VR and pass-through AR. If you haven't checked it out, they use a really interesting lens stack. It's like this clover design where it's four as opposed to seeing in each eye, one warped image to match the lens. The lens is actually split into 4 images that get combined into one image per eye, which allows them to hide like eye tracking hardware in the center of the display or the center of the lens, looking right at your eye as opposed to offset from the side of your eye.
Wild.
Yeah. Also allows for really flat optical stack. So it's really 90-degree field of view, horizontal and vertical, but a lot of questions as to what like diagonal field of view looks like with this interesting lens design.
It is standalone.
Yeah. XR2 Qualcomm. Yeah. So same hardware as the Quest and as the Vive Focus, or Quest 2 and the Vive Focus 3, but for $500. Pretty good price. And that's it. Oh, and did we talk about Lone Echo launch date? I guess we mentioned that last week. Lone Echo 2?
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah, Lone Echo 2 comes out, I believe, next week as well. So yeah, hopefully we'll have a chance to play that when that comes out. That will do it for the show this week. I am off to jump on a plane to head over to New York for New York Comic Con.
New York City.
That's going to be awesome. I am so jealous. There's going to be awesome cosplay there, and really excited to see some of the new, I think we actually might have news coming out of panels, which we've missed from San Diego kind of being off the schedule.
Yeah, I don't expect the show floor to be as bustling, with the high profile exhibitors. I think a lot of people are still staying away, but it's New York, just a sheer number of people, even though at reduced capacity. Like New York always shows off when it comes to cosplay, and the Javits Center is a gorgeous place in the fall. So I can't wait. It's really exciting. So we'll have a lot of videos and stuff from New York Comic Con. If you're heading to the show, please ping us on social media. I'm at NChan on Twitter. You can always ping us at TestedCom. You can find Kishore and Jeremy on there as well, Science Quiche and at Shareware. But until then, good to see you both. Good to get the gang back together. I'll play a piece of music after we wrap up, so you guys can jet off to your day jobs. But thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested. just one story this week. What were you guys doing 1.8 billion years ago?
Floating around the universe in various forms.
That's it.